She stood on the curb, 8 months pregnant with twins, watching security guards throw her life into trash bags. No husband, no home, no mercy, just the cold truth that love was a lie and family was conditional. And then she found it, a weathered duffel bag behind a dumpster, stuffed with more cash than she'd ever seen. $10 million. Stolen money. Dangerous money. She could have walked away. But that night, broken and desperate, she made a choice. A choice that would rewrite her destiny. From discarded wife to unstoppable force. From shame to strength. Her husband went to prison. His mother begged for forgiveness. And the money that was meant to destroy her became her redemption. She lost everything, but she found something greater, herself. Sometimes the people who throw you away are the ones who set you free. Hello, family. Welcome back to Winnie Tales. Before we begin, I have a small but heartfelt request. Please subscribe. Your support is what keeps these stories alive. Every time you click that button, you're helping us share voices that would otherwise be forgotten and stories that deserve to be heard. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from. Because together, we are not just telling stories. We are keeping hope alive. The mansion was too quiet for a place that was supposed to feel like home. Lisa Pierce stood in the kitchen, one hand pressed against her swollen belly, the other gripping the marble counter for balance. 8 months pregnant with twins, and she could barely recognize herself anymore. Not just her body, though that had changed too, but something deeper. The way she'd learned to make herself smaller. Quieter. Less. The house around her was perfect. Everything in its place. Crystal vases that cost more than her childhood home. Paintings she didn't understand but pretended to admire. Furniture so expensive she was afraid to sit on it wrong. She had cleaned the entire first floor that afternoon, even though the housekeeper had already been through. Margaret, her mother-in-law, was coming for dinner. Margaret always noticed what was out of place. Always had something to say. Lisa checked the oven. Clive's favorite, herb-crusted lamb with roasted vegetables, and that particular wine reduction Margaret had taught her to make. Not too much time, dear. She could still hear Margaret's voice, sharp and sweet like poisoned honey. We're not peasants. The clock on the wall ticked past 8 p.m. Clive had promised to be home by 7. Promised. But lately, his promises felt like air, easy to make, impossible to hold. She lowered herself carefully onto the velvet dining chair, rubbing her belly in slow circles. The babies were active tonight, pushing against her ribs, reminding her they were running out of room. It's okay, she whispered. Daddy's just working hard. He's building a future for us. But even as she said it, doubt crept in like cold wind under a door. The late nights. The distance in his eyes. The way he barely touched her anymore, like pregnancy had made her untouchable. Undesirable. By 8:30, the lamb was drying out. By 9 o'clock, Lisa couldn't sit still anymore. She tried calling Clive. Straight to voicemail. She tried texting. Read but no reply. Margaret's words from last week echoed in her mind. You know, Lisa, in our circles, wives know when to give their husbands space. Clive has responsibilities. Important responsibilities. You should focus on being supportive, not needy. Needy. The word had stung then. It burned now. At 9:45, Lisa made a decision. She packed the dinner into containers, grabbed her coat, the expensive one Clive had bought her so she'd look the part at company events, and headed out into the night. Light rain had started to fall, soft and cold. She didn't bother with an umbrella. Her hair would frizz. Margaret would notice tomorrow. But tonight, she didn't care. Clive's office was downtown, in a gleaming tower of glass and steel that reflected the city lights like scattered diamonds. Underwood Investment Group occupied 3 entire floors. When she arrived, the lobby security guard, Frank, she'd met him before, looked surprised. Mrs. Underwood. Bit late for a visit. I brought my husband dinner, she said, forcing a smile, holding up the containers like proof of her good intentions. Like proof she belonged. Frank nodded, buzzing her through. The elevator ride to the 23rd floor felt longer than usual. Her reflection in the polished doors showed a woman she barely recognized. Tired eyes. Swollen face. Hair pulled back in a messy bun. Not the polished, put-together wife Margaret demanded she be. When the elevator doors opened, The hallway was dim except for one office at the end. Clive's corner suite. The light spilled out through the glass walls, and Lisa's heart did something strange. Hope and dread twisting together. She walked slowly, her footsteps muffled by plush carpet. As she got closer, she could see inside. Clive sat at his desk, leaning back in his leather chair, laughing. Really laughing, the way he used to laugh with her, back when she still made him happy. And across from him, perched on the edge of his desk in a dress that cost more than Lisa's car, was Vanessa Cole, his business partner. Beautiful, sophisticated, everything Lisa had tried so hard to become. Lisa froze. Through the glass, she watched Vanessa lean forward, her hand sliding across the desk to touch Clive's. She watched him smile, that intimate, knowing smile that used to belong to her. She watched Vanessa whisper something that made him laugh again, and then he pulled her closer, and they kissed. The containers slipped from Lisa's hands, hitting the floor with a dull thud. Inside, the sound must have carried because Clive's head snapped toward the door. Their eyes met through the glass. For a second, everything stopped. The world narrowed to just that look, his guilt, her devastation. But he didn't jump up. Didn't pull away from Vanessa. He just sighed, like Lisa was an inconvenience. A problem to handle. Slowly, he stood and walked to the door, opening it just enough to step into the hallway. He didn't invite her inside. Behind him, Vanessa straightened her dress, looking more annoyed than ashamed. Lisa. His voice was flat. Tired. What are you doing here? She couldn't speak. Her throat had closed around all the words she wanted to scream. This is. He glanced back at Vanessa, then at Lisa. This isn't what it looks like. That broke something open inside her. Don't, she whispered. Don't insult me like that. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she'd once found endearing. Now it just looked dismissive. You're overreacting. You've been emotional lately, the pregnancy hormones. Hormones? The word came out sharp. You're kissing another woman and you're blaming my hormones? Lisa. He stepped closer, lowering his voice like she was the problem, like she was causing a scene. Go home. We'll talk about this later. We'll talk now. His jaw tightened. I'm working. This is my office, my business, and you're embarrassing yourself. Embarrassing herself. Like she was the one who'd done something wrong. Vanessa appeared in the doorway behind him, all confidence and perfectly applied lipstick. Maybe you should go, Lisa, she said softly, almost gently. This isn't the place. The audacity of it, the sheer, breathtaking cruelty, stole whatever fight Lisa had left. She looked at Clive one more time, searching his face for the man she'd married. But he was gone. Or maybe he'd never existed at all. She turned and walked back to the elevator, leaving the spilled dinner on the floor. Behind her, she heard the office door close. Not a word of apology. Not a single call to wait. The rain had gotten heavier by the time she reached the street. It soaked through her coat, her dress, her shoes. She stood there for a moment, looking up at the glowing windows of his office, and wondered how she'd gotten here. How love had turned into this. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a small voice whispered, this is just the beginning. The morning had started the way most mornings did lately, with Lisa standing in front of her closet, paralyzed by choice. Not because she had too many options, but because every decision felt like a test she might fail. The navy dress with the white collar? Too matronly. The floral wrap dress? Margaret had called it quaint last time, which Lisa had learned was code for cheap. She settled on the cream cashmere sweater Clive had bought her for Christmas, paired with maternity slacks that cost more than her first car. At least Margaret couldn't criticize clothes she'd essentially chosen herself. 8 months pregnant with twins, and Lisa's body had become something foreign. Her ankles disappeared by noon. Her back ached constantly. But it was the way people looked at her that hurt most. Like she'd become invisible, reduced to nothing but the belly she carried. Even Clive barely looked at her anymore. She studied herself in the mirror, turning sideways. The sweater stretched tight across her stomach. She tugged it down, wishing she could make herself smaller. More acceptable. Less much. You're still beautiful, she whispered to her reflection, but the words tasted like lies. Downstairs, the housekeeper had already left breakfast on the table. Clive's chair was empty, his coffee cold. He'd left before dawn again, a pattern that had become so normal Lisa couldn't remember the last time they'd eaten together. She sat alone in the cavernous dining room, surrounded by Margaret's wedding china, family heirlooms she'd been lectured never to use for casual meals, and ate Greek yogurt with berries. Her appetite had disappeared weeks ago, replaced by a constant knot of anxiety that lived just below her ribs. The house phone rang. Lisa's stomach dropped. It was always Margaret. "Good morning, dear." That voice, smooth as silk and twice as suffocating. "I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." Lisa swallowed her yogurt too quickly. No, of course not." "Wonderful. I wanted to remind you about the charity luncheon on Thursday. The Pediatric Cancer Foundation? You are planning to attend, aren't you?" Lisa's mind went blank. Thursday. Had Margaret mentioned a luncheon? She scrolled frantically through her memory, coming up empty. Of course. Yes. Thursday. A pause. Long enough to sting. "You forgot." "No, Lisa." Margaret's voice dropped into that particular register that made Lisa feel 12 years old. "These commitments matter. The Underwood name carries weight in this community, and when you're absent, people notice. They talk." "I'm sorry, Margaret. I'll be there. Wear something elegant, please. Not that floral thing you wore to the spring benefit. You looked like a garden party had vomited on you." The line went dead. Lisa sat holding the phone, her hand trembling. She wanted to cry, but she'd learned that crying was emotional instability. Margaret had made that clear after the Christmas incident, when Lisa had wept at the dinner table because Clive's sister had made a joke about pregnant brain, and everyone had laughed. "Control yourself, dear," Margaret had hissed later. "Underwood women don't fall apart in public." But Lisa wasn't an Underwood woman. Not really. She was Lisa Pierce from Riverside, the girl who'd grown up in foster care, who'd worked 2 jobs to put herself through community college, who'd met Clive at a hospital fundraiser where she was serving drinks and he was networking. He'd called her beautiful. He'd said she was different from the women in his world, real, authentic, genuine. Turned out, those were just pretty words for beneath us. The afternoon dragged. Lisa tried to read, but the words swam. She tried to nap, but the babies kicked relentlessly, like they could feel her anxiety. By 5 p.m., she decided to cook. Cooking always calmed her, reminded her of the group home kitchen where she'd learned to make meals from nothing. She made Clive's favorite, herb-crusted lamb with roasted vegetables, and that wine reduction Margaret had taught her. "Not too much time, dear. We're not peasants." By 7 o'clock, the table was set. Candles lit. Music playing softly. Lisa had changed into a dress that still fit, brushed her hair until it shined, dabbed perfume on her wrists. She looked in the mirror one last time and saw a woman trying too hard. But maybe trying was all she had left. 7:30, she texted Clive. "Dinner's ready when you are. Made your favorite." 8 o'clock, no response. 8:30, she called. Straight to voicemail. By 9 o'clock, the lamb was cooling on the counter, the vegetables congealing in their butter. Lisa sat at the dining table, one hand on her belly, whispering to the babies. "Daddy's just busy. He works so hard for us." But her voice cracked on the last word. By 10 o'clock, she'd moved to the living room window, watching headlights pass on the street below. Each one made her heart leap. Maybe this one, maybe this one. None stopped. At 10:42, her phone buzzed. Not a call. A text. "Stuck at office. Don't wait up." For words. Not "I'm sorry." Not "miss you." Just a dismissal. Lisa stared at the message until the screen went dark. Then she stood up, grabbed her coat and the dinner containers, and walked out into the night. The rain started as she reached the car, light at first, then heavier. By the time she reached downtown, water streamed down the windshield like tears. The parking garage was nearly empty. Her footsteps echoed as she walked toward the elevator. Frank, the security guard, looked surprised to see her. "Mrs. Underwood. Late visit." "Surprising my husband," she said, holding up the containers with a smile that hurt her face. The elevator ride to the 23rd floor felt eternal. Her reflection in the polished doors showed a desperate woman pretending everything was fine. When the doors opened, only one office was lit at the end of the hall. Clive's corner suite. Lisa walked slowly, her heels muffled by carpet. Through the glass walls, she could see him, leaning back in his chair, laughing. really laughing, the way he used to with her. And Vanessa Cole perched on his desk, legs crossed, leaning forward. Her hand touched his. He didn't pull away. Lisa stopped breathing. Vanessa whispered something. Clive smiled that smile, intimate, knowing, alive. Then Vanessa leaned in, and he met her halfway. The kiss was brief but devastating. The containers slipped from Lisa's hands, hitting the carpet with a muffled thud. Clive's head snapped toward the door. Their eyes met through the glass. For 1 second she saw guilt. Then it hardened into irritation. He stood, walked to the door, opened it just enough to step into the hallway. Behind him, Vanessa straightened her skirt, unconcerned. "Lisa." His voice was flat. "What are you doing here?" She couldn't speak. Her throat had closed around everything she wanted to scream. "This isn't what you think." "Don't." The word came out broken. "Please don't." He glanced back at Vanessa, then at Lisa. "You're overreacting. The pregnancy has made you emotional." "Emotional?" She almost laughed. "I just watched you kiss her." "Lisa." He stepped closer, lowering his voice like she was the embarrassment. "Go home. We'll discuss this later." "We'll discuss it now." His jaw tightened. Behind him, Vanessa appeared in the doorway, perfectly composed. "Maybe you should leave, Lisa," she said softly. "This isn't the place for a scene." Lisa stared at her, this woman who'd stolen her husband, now telling her where she belonged. She looked at Clive one last time. "How long?" "Lisa, how long have you been sleeping with her?" His silence was answer enough. She waited for something, an apology, an explanation, a flicker of the man she'd married. But his eyes were cold. Distant. "Done. You stopped being interesting when you got pregnant," he said quietly. "I tried, Lisa. I really did. But you're not what I need anymore." The words hit like physical blows, each one finding soft tissue, tearing through. Lisa turned and walked back to the elevator. She heard the office door close behind her. Not his voice calling her back. Not footsteps following. Just the door, final as a coffin lid. In the elevator, she caught her reflection again. The same desperate woman. But something in her eyes had changed. Something had broken, or maybe finally broken free. The rain was heavier when she reached the street. It soaked through her coat, her dress, plastered her hair to her face. She stood there, looking up at his office windows, and felt the last thread of hope snap. She had tried so hard to be enough. And it had never mattered at all. Lisa drove home in a fog. The windshield wipers beat a rhythm that sounded like stupid, stupid, stupid. Rain hammered the roof. Her hands gripped the steering wheel so tight her knuckles went white, but she couldn't feel them. Couldn't feel anything except the echo of Clive's words. "You stopped being interesting when you got pregnant." The mansion loomed ahead, every window blazing with light. Strange. It was past midnight. The house should have been dark. Her stomach lurched, a warning her brain was too numb to process. She pulled into the circular driveway and saw them immediately, Margaret's silver Mercedes. And behind it, a black security van. Lisa's heart stuttered. She sat frozen in her car, watching shadows move behind the curtains. Something was happening. Something wrong. She forced herself out, legs unsteady, and climbed the front steps. The door swung open before she could reach for her keys. Margaret stood in the foyer, imperious in a black pantsuit, pearls gleaming at her throat. Behind her, 2 security guards in uniform flanked the entrance. They weren't the estate's usual staff. These were hired muscle. "Margaret." Lisa's voice came out small. "What's going on?" Margaret's smile was thin and surgical. "Come in, dear. We need to talk." Lisa stepped inside her own home, except it didn't feel like hers anymore. It felt like walking into a trap. "I spoke with Clive," Margaret said, closing the door with a soft click. "He told me about your visit to his office tonight. Your little scene." "Scene?" Lisa's voice cracked. "He was with Vanessa." "I saw." "Yes, I know." Margaret's tone was bored, like they were discussing weather. "I've known for months, actually." The words took a moment to land. "You knew." "Of course I knew." Margaret walked past her into the living room, gesturing for the guards to follow. "Vanessa is good for him. She's educated, sophisticated, from the right kind of family. She understands our world." Lisa felt the room tilt. "You approved of his affair?" Affair is such an ugly word. Margaret turned, examining her nails. I prefer to think of it as Clive correcting a mistake. A mistake? You, dear. Margaret's eyes were cold as January. You were always temporary. A working-class girl with no family, no pedigree, no connections. Clive was charmed by your novelty. But novelty wears off. Lisa's hand moved instinctively to her belly. I'm carrying his children. Yes. About that. Margaret's smile sharpened. Clive will provide financially for the children, of course. Underwoods take care of their responsibilities. But as for you, she nodded to the guards. They moved toward the staircase. What are you doing? Lisa followed them, panic rising. This is my house. This is Clive's house, Margaret corrected. Title's in his name. You have no legal claim to it. Lisa watched in horror as the guards climbed the stairs toward the bedroom. You can't just. I can actually. Clive signed the paperwork an hour ago. You're being removed from the premises. Removed? The word felt surreal. Margaret, please. I'm 8 months pregnant. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my concern. Margaret settled onto the sofa, crossing her legs like she was hosting tea. You should have thought about that before you embarrassed my son at his workplace. Upstairs, Lisa heard drawers opening, closets sliding. The guards were packing her things. Her life, stuffed into bags by strangers. She ran up the stairs, her pregnant belly making her slow and clumsy. In the bedroom, her clothes were being pulled from hangers, tossed into black garbage bags. Not suitcases. Garbage bags. Stop! She grabbed a guard's arm. Please stop. He shook her off, not rough but firm. Professional. This was just a job to him. 20 minutes later, her entire life sat on the curb in 7 black bags. Her clothes, her books, a few photos. Nothing valuable. Margaret had made sure of that. The jewelry Clive had given her. Family pieces, Margaret had called them, had stayed inside. Lisa stood on the sidewalk, staring at the bags. The rain had softened to a drizzle, but she was soaked through, shivering in her thin dress. Inside, through the windows, she could see Margaret making a phone call, gesturing with one manicured hand. The front door opened. For one desperate second, Lisa's heart leaped. Clive stood in the doorway, backlit by the warm glow of his home. Clive. She moved toward him, reaching out. Please. We can talk about this. We can work it out. He stepped back. Actually stepped back, like she was contagious. Don't, he said quietly. Just don't make this harder. Harder. Her voice broke. You're throwing me out. I'm pregnant with your children, and you're throwing me out in the middle of the night. You'll be fine, he said, but he wouldn't meet her eyes. You always land on your feet. That's what you people do. You people. Like she was a different species. Margaret appeared behind him, a hand on his shoulder. Possessive. Protective. Clive is filing for divorce, Lisa. The papers will be served within the week. I suggest you find a lawyer. With what money? Lisa's laugh came out harsh, almost hysterical. You took everything. We took what belongs to the Underwood family, Margaret corrected. You were never really part of it. She guided Clive back inside. He went without resistance, without looking back. The door closed. Lisa heard the lock click. She stood there, staring at the door, waiting for it to open again. Waiting for him to realize what he was doing. Waiting for some shred of the man she'd loved to resurface. The door stayed closed. Across the street, a neighbor's curtain twitched. Mrs. Harrison, who'd smiled at her at last month's garden party. The curtain fell back. No one came out to help. Lisa sank down on the curb, her hand pressed to her belly where the twins kicked and rolled. It's okay, she whispered. Mommy's got you. We'll figure this out. But she had nothing. No money. Her bank cards had been in her purse inside the house. No phone charger. No car. Clive's name was on the title. Just the clothes on her back and 7 bags of her broken life. She tried calling her friend Jenna, the one person from her old life she'd managed to stay in touch with. The number went straight to a recorded message. This number is no longer in service. Disconnected. Just like that. Margaret's influence, undoubtedly. Cutting her off from anyone who might help. Lisa stayed on that curb until dawn, watching her breath mist in the cold air. Neighbors left for work, averting their eyes as they passed. No one stopped. No one asked if she was okay. In this neighborhood, you didn't interfere with family business. especially not Underwood family business. When the sun rose, she gathered what she could carry, 2 bags, the lightest ones, and started walking. Her feet ached. Her back screamed. The twins pressed against her lungs, making it hard to breathe. She found a park 3 miles away and collapsed on a bench. Pregnant women weren't supposed to sleep on park benches. But pregnant women weren't supposed to be homeless either. That night was endless. Every sound made her jolt awake. Every shadow seemed threatening. Her body cramped. The twins barely moved, like they could sense something was wrong. The second night, she found a 24-hour diner and nursed 1 cup of coffee for 6 hours until the manager asked her to leave. She spent the rest of the night huddled in a bus shelter, shaking from cold and exhaustion. By the 3rd day, she was dizzy. Hadn't eaten more than stolen ketchup packets from the diner. Her lips were cracked. Her vision kept blurring. The twins weren't moving as much anymore, and that terrified her more than anything. She wandered into an alley behind a restaurant, drawn by the smell of food from the dumpster. Maybe there'd be something edible, something to keep her babies alive. The world tilted sideways. Her legs gave out. She crumpled against the brick wall, sliding down until she was sitting in a puddle of rainwater and grease. The sky above was gray and spinning. She pressed both hands to her belly, feeling for movement. Nothing. Then a small flutter. Still alive. Still fighting. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry I'm not strong enough." Her vision darkened at the edges. She let her head fall back against the wall. This was it. This was how it ended. Discarded behind a dumpster like garbage. Like Margaret had always believed she was. Her eyes closed, and everything went dark. Lisa woke to the smell of rotting garbage and her own blood. Not much blood. Just a smear on her palm where she'd scraped it against the brick wall. But enough to make her heart hammer with panic. She pressed her other hand to her belly, feeling for movement. Nothing. "Please," she whispered. "Please, please, please." Then a kick. Hard enough to make her gasp. Then another. The babies were moving frantically, rolling and pushing like they were trying to escape. "I know," she breathed. "I know, I'm sorry. Mommy's trying." Dawn was breaking, gray and reluctant. The alley smelled like old grease and piss. Lisa's dress was soaked through, clinging to her skin. She was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. When had she gotten this cold? She tried to stand. Her legs buckled. 3rd try, she made it upright, leaning heavily against the wall. The world tilted and swayed. When was the last time she'd eaten? Yesterday morning? The day before? The dumpster loomed ahead of her, green metal streaked with rust. Her stomach turned at the thought, but desperation was a powerful thing. Maybe there'd be something. Half a sandwich. Discarded fries. Anything. She took 1 step. Then another. Each movement felt like pushing through water. The babies kicked again, harder. Urgent. Like they were saying, "Do something, Mom. We need you to do something." "I'm trying," she said out loud. Her voice sounded strange, thin, frayed at the edges. "I'm trying so hard." She reached the dumpster, peered over the edge. The smell hit her like a fist. She gagged, turned away, pressed her forehead against the cold metal. This was her life now. Digging through garbage while pregnant with twins. Margaret had been right about one thing. She'd never really belonged in their world. But she'd never imagined she'd end up here either. The sky darkened suddenly. Lisa looked up. Storm clouds rolled in fast, thick and black. Thunder rumbled in the distance. The first drops of rain fell, fat and cold. Within seconds, it was a downpour. Lisa stumbled toward the back of the alley, looking for shelter. The dumpster sat against the brick wall, leaving a small gap between them. Not much, but enough. She wedged herself into the space, pulling her knees up as much as her belly would allow. Lightning cracked across the sky, turning everything white for a split second. Thunder followed immediately. The storm was right on top of her. She wrapped her arms around her belly, trying to shield her babies from the cold and wet. They were still moving, restless and agitated. Could they feel her fear? Did they know how badly she was failing them? Another flash of lightning. In that brief illumination, Lisa saw something. A corner of black fabric, wedged deep in the gap between the dumpster and the wall. Almost invisible except for that 1 second of light. She stared at the spot, waiting for the next flash. When it came, she saw it again. Definitely fabric. A bag of some kind. Probably trash. Probably nothing. But something made her reach for it anyway. The bag was stuck tight. She had to brace her feet against the wall and pull with both hands. For a moment, nothing happened. Then it shifted. Another pull, and it came free, so suddenly she fell backward, the bag landing in her lap. It was heavy. Extraordinarily heavy. A black duffel bag, the kind people took to gyms, with a broken zipper and fabric, so worn it was almost gray. Lisa's hands shook as she grabbed the zipper pull. It stuck. She pulled harder, and it gave way with a metallic scrape. The bag fell open. For a long moment, Lisa's brain couldn't process what she was seeing. Stacks of bills. Bundles and bundles of $100 bills, wrapped in rubber bands. The bag was stuffed full of them. She reached out slowly, like the money might vanish if she moved too fast. Her fingers touched the top bundle. The paper was real. Slightly damp from the bag, but real. She pulled out one stack. Then another. Then another. They kept coming. The bag was packed tight with cash. Lisa started to laugh. It came out wrong, high and broken, edged with hysteria. She pressed her hand over her mouth, but the laughter kept bubbling up. It didn't sound like her. It sounded like someone losing their mind. Is this some kind of test, God? She looked up at the rain-dark sky, tears streaming down her face, mixing with the rain. Is this a joke to you? The money sat in her lap, getting wet. Real money. More money than she'd ever seen in her life. Possibly more money than she'd make in 10 lifetimes. And it had just appeared. Behind a dumpster. In the alley where she'd collapsed. It was impossible. It was insane. It was exactly what she needed. Her laughter died. Reality crashed back in, cold and sharp. This wasn't her money. Someone had hidden it here. Someone dangerous, probably. People didn't stuff duffel bags with cash and leave them behind dumpsters unless something had gone very wrong. If she took it, she'd be stealing. If she took it and got caught, she could go to prison. But if she left it, she would die. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. And her babies would die with her. She sat there in the rain, holding a fortune, paralyzed by the weight of the choice. Take it and become a thief. Leave it and become a corpse. The babies kicked, hard, sharp jabs that made her gasp. Both of them moving at once. Fighting for survival in the only way they knew how. Lisa looked down at her belly. At the place where 2 tiny humans were depending on her to keep them alive. They didn't care about her principles. They didn't care about right and wrong. They just needed to survive. And she was the only one who could save them. I'm sorry, she whispered. To God, maybe. To herself. To whoever this money belonged to. I'm so sorry. She zipped the bag closed. Getting to her feet took 3 tries. The bag was so heavy she could barely lift it. She dragged it more than carried it, one hand gripping the strap, the other pressed against the wall for balance. The street at the end of the alley swam in and out of focus. She aimed for it like a drowning person swimming for shore. A motel sign glowed through the rain. Parkside Inn. Vacancy. The letters flickered, half of them burned out. It was the kind of place that didn't ask questions. The lobby smelled like cigarettes and Pine Sol. A man behind bulletproof glass looked up from his phone. His eyes barely registered her, soaking wet, pregnant, dragging a duffel bag. Need a room, Lisa said. Her voice sounded far away. $72. One night. She dropped the bag on the counter with a heavy thud. The man's eyebrows rose slightly. She unzipped it just enough to pull out one bundle, peeled off a $100 bill. His eyes went to the bag, then to her face. She met his gaze steadily, trying to look like someone who carried bags full of cash all the time. Like this was normal. He took the bill, gave her change, slid a key across the counter. Room 9. End of the hall. The room was small and stale, with a bed that sagged in the middle and curtains that didn't quite close. Lisa locked the door, threw the deadbolt, dragged a chair under the handle. Then she collapsed on the bed and stared at the ceiling. The bag sat on the floor beside her. Innocent. Damning. She should count it. She should figure out what she had. But her body wouldn't move. Exhaustion hit like a wave, pulling her under. Her last thought before sleep took her was a prayer. Please let me wake up. Please let this be real. Please let us survive this. Outside, the storm raged on. Lightning flashed. Thunder rolled. And in room 9 of the Parkside Inn, a pregnant woman slept next to a fortune that wasn't hers. A fortune that would either save her or destroy her. She wouldn't know which until it was too late. Lisa spent 3 days in that motel room, afraid to leave, afraid to stay. She counted the money obsessively, pulled out every bundle, arranged them in stacks on the stained bedspread, counted them twice, then 3 times. The numbers didn't change. $10 million. Exactly. The precision of it made her stomach turn. This wasn't random. Someone had counted this carefully, bundled it deliberately, hidden it for a reason. On the second day, she forced herself to leave long enough to buy a burner phone from a convenience store 3 blocks away. The clerk barely looked at her. She paid cash, wore sunglasses even though it was overcast, kept her head down. Back in the room, she turned on the phone with shaking hands and pulled up a news site. The headline hit her like a physical blow. Major embezzlement at Underwood Investment Group. $10 million missing. Her vision grayed at the edges. She sat down hard on the bed, the phone trembling in her grip. Underwood Investment Group. Federal investigators called to probe disappearance of client trust funds. CEO Clive Underwood under scrutiny. Business partner Vanessa Cole unavailable for comment. Lisa read the article 3 times, her heart hammering faster with each pass. $10 million. Missing from Clive's firm. The same amount sitting in a duffel bag in her motel room. This was his money. Or Vanessa's. Or both of theirs. And they were looking for it. Were they looking for her? Did Clive know she'd been in that alley? Had someone seen her? She stood up, paced the small room, her mind racing. She should turn it in. Call the police. Explain that she found it, that she wasn't involved. But who would believe her? The scorned ex-wife of the man being investigated. Suddenly appearing with his missing money? They'd think she was an accomplice. They'd arrest her. And even if they believed her, even if she could prove she just found it, she'd be back on the street. Homeless. Pregnant. With nothing. The baby's kicked. A reminder of what was at stake. Lisa sank back onto the bed, pressing her palms against her temples. She needed to think. Actually think, not panic. If she kept the money, she couldn't be Lisa Pierce anymore. That woman was too easy to find, too connected to Clive. If he was searching for this bag, and he must be, he'd eventually connect the dots. The timing was too perfect. His wife disappeared the same night as his money. She needed to disappear completely. Become someone else. Someone with no connection to the Underwoods, no past for them to trace. Lisa stared at her reflection in the mirror above the dresser. Dark circles under her eyes. Lank hair. Hollow cheeks. She barely recognized herself already. "Who are you?" she whispered. The answer came slowly, piece by piece. Her mother's maiden name, Brooks. She'd seen it once on an old birth certificate before her mother died. Her foster sister's name, Lily. The only person who'd been kind to her in that group home, before she aged out of the system. Lily Brooks. Simple. Forgettable. Nobody special. She said it out loud, testing it. "My name is Lily Brooks." The woman in the mirror looked back at her. Still scared. Still broken. But maybe someone who could survive. The boarding house was 3 bus rides away, in a neighborhood where people minded their own business. The landlady was elderly, soft-spoken, with cloudy eyes that suggested she didn't see much beyond what was directly in front of her. "I'm Lily Brooks," Lisa said, keeping her voice steady. "I'm looking for a room. Month to month, if possible." The old woman looked her up and down, taking in the obvious pregnancy. "References?" "No, ma'am. I'm starting over. I can pay 3 months up front." "Cash." That got her attention. 3 months. "Yes, ma'am." The woman studied her for a long moment. Then she held out her hand. "Mrs. Donnelly. Rooms on the 2nd floor. Bathrooms shared. No guests after 9. "Thank you." Lisa counted out the money. Careful not to pull out too much, not to show how much she was carrying. The room was small. A twin bed, a dresser with a cracked mirror, a closet barely big enough for a few hangers. The window overlooked an alley. But it had a door that locked. And it was hers. She hid most of the money in the false bottom of an old trunk she found at a thrift store. Kept a few thousand accessible, buried the rest deep. Every time she touched it, guilt twisted in her stomach. "This isn't yours. You're a thief." "I'm a survivor," she told herself. "There's a difference." But late at night, she wasn't sure there was. The bookstore cafe was called Chapter and Brew, squeezed between a laundromat and a check-cashing place. The owner was a man in his 60s with kind eyes and ink-stained fingers. "I'm Lily," she said. "I saw your help wanted sign." He looked at her belly, then at her face. "When are you due?" "2 months." "And you want to work?" "I need to work." He was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. "I can pay under the table. Minimum wage, but flexible hours." "Can you make coffee?" "Yes, sir." "Can you shelve books without judgment?" She almost smiled. "Yes, sir." "Then you're hired." "I'm Samuels." "Don't call me sir." The work was simple. Make coffee, wipe tables, organize shelves. Samuels didn't ask about her past, didn't pry into why she needed cash payments. Sometimes she'd catch him watching her with concern, but he never said anything. It wasn't much, but it was honest. And after everything, honest felt like medicine. The free clinic was in a converted church basement. The nurse who took her information had tired eyes but gentle hands. Name: Lily Brooks. Address: Lisa, no Lily, gave the boarding house address. The nurse wrote it down without question. This was the kind of place where people came with fake names and no insurance. They didn't judge. They just helped. "You're measuring small for twins," the nurse said during the examination. "Have you been eating enough?" Lily looked away. "I'm trying." The nurse gave her a list of food banks, shelters that served meals, resources for pregnant women. Lily took the paper and pretended she'd use it. But she couldn't risk going to places where they'd ask too many questions. Instead, she bought groceries with cash. Ate carefully, deliberately. Every choice was strategic now. Every dollar spent, every word spoken, every step taken, all calculated for survival. 6 weeks passed. Lily Brooks became real. She learned the rhythm of the bookstore, the preferences of the regulars. She memorized her new birthday, her new history. She practiced her signature until it looked natural. At night, in her small room, she'd sit by the window and watch the street below. Her hand would rest on her belly, feeling the twins shift and turn. "We're going to make it," she'd whisper. "I don't know how, but we're going to make it." The guilt was always there, a constant weight. But so was something else, something harder and sharper. The will to survive. The refusal to let them break her completely. She'd been Lisa Pierce, the girl desperate for approval, willing to shrink herself to fit someone else's world. She'd been Mrs. Clive Underwood, the temporary wife, the embarrassment, the mistake. Now she was Lily Brooks. Nobody special. Nobody important. But nobody's victim either. One evening, after her shift at the bookstore, she walked home slowly through the autumn air. The leaves were turning, the light golden and soft. For just a moment, she let herself feel it. Not happiness exactly, but something close. A fragile kind of peace. In her pocket, the burner phone buzzed. She pulled it out, saw a news alert. Underwood Investment Group scandal deepens. Vanessa Cole missing. Her hand tightened on the phone. They were still searching. Still investigating. The past wasn't done with her yet. But tonight, in this moment, she was safe. Federal sheltered. Her babies were growing strong. She climbed the stairs to her room, unlocked the door, and stood in the small space she'd made her own. "We're going to make it," she whispered again. And for the first time, she almost believed it. Winter softened into spring. Lily Brooks, she thought of herself that way now, rarely slipping, grew rounder and slower. The twins seemed to be running out of room, pushing against her ribs, her lungs, making every breath deliberate. But she was healthy. The clinic nurse, Rosa, said so at every visit. "Your babies are strong," she'd say, pressing the stethoscope to Lily's belly. "You're doing good, Mama." The words always made Lily's throat tight. Nobody had called her Mama before. Nobody had told her she was doing good. At the bookstore, Samuels moved her to lighter duties without being asked. No more lifting boxes, no more reaching high shelves. Just the register and making coffee, things she could do sitting down when her ankles swelled. "You don't have to keep me on," she said one afternoon. "I know I'm slowing down." He looked up from the inventory list, frowning over his reading glasses. "You think I'm going to fire a pregnant woman? What kind of monster do you take me for?" "I just meant." "I know what you meant." He went back to his list. "Take the day off tomorrow. You look tired." She was tired. Bone tired. But tired felt better than empty, and work kept her moving forward. Mrs. Donnelly, her landlady, started leaving small gifts outside Lily's door. A baby blanket, a bag of newborn diapers. Once, a mobile with fabric stars that spun in the breeze. She never said anything about them, never acknowledged the gifts. Just left them like a fairy godmother who didn't want credit. Lily cried over that mobile for 20 minutes. These people, Samuels, Mrs. Donnelly, Rosa, they barely knew her. Didn't know her real name, her real story. But they cared anyway. Not because of what she could give them, not because she fit some standard. Just because she was a person who needed help. It was a kind of grace Lily had never experienced before. The contractions started during the morning shift. At first, Lily thought it was just more Braxton Hicks, the practice contractions that had been plaguing her for weeks. She gripped the counter, breathed through it, kept making coffee. But these didn't stop. They came in waves, growing stronger, closer together. Samuels noticed her leaning against the wall, pale and sweating. "Lily, you okay?" "I think." Another contraction hit harder. She gasped. "I think it's time." He moved faster than she'd ever seen him move, flipping the sign to closed, grabbing his keys. "Can you walk?" "I can try." She made it to his ancient station wagon, climbed in awkwardly. The pain was building, relentless. Her water broke in his front seat, a gush of warmth that made her gasp. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." "Don't be ridiculous." He was already pulling into traffic, driving with surprising speed. "It's just a car." County General Hospital was chaos. People everywhere, long waits, fluorescent lights that made everything look sickly. But when they saw Lily doubled over, clutching her belly, a nurse rushed over with a wheelchair. "How far apart are the contractions?" 3 minutes, Lily managed. "Maybe less." They whisked her away. Samuels tried to follow, but a nurse stopped him. "Family only." "I don't have family," Lily called back. "Please let him stay." The nurse looked between them, then sighed. Waiting rooms on the 3rd floor. Labor was exactly as terrible as everyone said it would be. Worse, actually. Like her body was trying to turn itself inside out. The doctor kept saying things like, "You're doing great," and "almost there." But Lily wanted to scream that she wasn't doing great. She was dying. This was a mistake. She couldn't do this. "Push," the doctor commanded. "Big push, Lily. Come on." She pushed. Screamed. Pushed again. And then a cry. Thin and furious. The sound of someone who'd just been evicted from the only home they'd ever known. "It's a girl," the doctor said, holding up a tiny, red, squirming thing. Lily couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. That was her daughter. Her daughter. They laid the baby on her chest for just a moment, warm and slippery and perfect, before whisking her away to check her. "One more," the doctor said. "Ready." Lily wasn't ready. Would never be ready. But the contractions came anyway, and she pushed because she had no choice. The second cry was quieter, almost questioning. "Another girl." "Twins," the nurse said, smiling. "2 beautiful girls." They cleaned them, weighed them, wrapped them in those thin hospital blankets. Then they brought them back, one for each arm. Lily looked down at them, tiny faces, closed eyes, little fists waving at nothing. They were so small. So impossibly, terrifyingly small. And they were hers. The tears came without warning, hard and fast. She bent over them, careful not to crush them, and sobbed. All the fear, all the pain, all the months of running and hiding and barely surviving, it all poured out. "You two are my reason for everything," she whispered against their heads. Everything. They named them before leaving the hospital. The nurse needed names for the birth certificates. Lily held the first baby, the one who'd cried so loudly. "Grace," she said, "because she's a gift I didn't earn." And the second, who'd been quieter, more watchful even in these first hours. "Faith, because I have to believe we'll make it." Grace and Faith Brooks. Nobody special. Nobody important. But hers. Mrs. Donnelly took one look at Lily struggling up the stairs with 2 car seats and sighed. "You can't manage this by yourself. I'll help with feedings until you get your feet under you." She showed up that first night when both babies were screaming, when Lily was crying too, overwhelmed and exhausted. Mrs. Donnelly just scooped up Faith, settled into the chair, and started rocking. "Babies cry," she said calmly. "It's what they do. Doesn't mean you're failing." But it felt like failing. Felt like drowning. Lily had never been so tired in her life. Every 2 hours they needed feeding. Their tiny diapers needed changing. They spit up, they cried, they needed constant holding. And yet, when Grace wrapped her tiny hand around Lily's finger, when Faith made those small snuffling sounds while nursing, when they both finally fell asleep on her chest, warm and trusting and alive, something in Lily's chest cracked open. This was love. Real love. Not the desperate, approval-seeking thing she'd felt for Clive. Not the transactional relationship with Margaret. This was bone-deep, cellular love. The kind that would make her walk through fire. The kind that already had. At 3 weeks postpartum, Lily started writing again. It started small, just notes on her phone while the babies slept. Thoughts about survival. About what it felt like to be thrown away. About the shame of homelessness, the terror of pregnancy alone, the surreal experience of finding salvation in a duffel bag. The words poured out like they'd been waiting. She bought a journal from the thrift store, nothing fancy, spiral-bound, and filled page after page. It wasn't polished. It was raw and messy and sometimes barely coherent. But it was true. She wrote about Margaret's cruelty. About the neighbors who'd watched her sit on that curb and done nothing. About sleeping on park benches while 8 months pregnant. She wrote about the money. The guilt that still gnawed at her. The way she'd chosen survival over principle. She wrote about Grace and Faith. About learning to be a mother when nobody had ever mothered her properly. And slowly a realization formed. She wasn't the only one. Somewhere out there, other women were sitting on curbs, sleeping in alleys, wondering if they'd survive. Other women were being told they weren't good enough, weren't the right class, weren't wanted. Other women needed what she'd needed, a place to land. A place with no judgment, no prerequisites, no barriers. Just safety. Just grace. One afternoon, while the twins napped, Lily opened her laptop, a cheap used one she'd bought with cash, and started searching. Domestic violence shelters. Single mother programs. Transitional housing. She read about wait lists months long, about programs that required sobriety tests and background checks, about shelters that turned women away for being too pregnant or having too many children. The system was broken, or maybe it was working exactly as designed, keeping out the people who needed help most. Lily closed the laptop and looked at her sleeping daughters. She had $10 million hidden under her floorboards. Money that wasn't hers, that she'd stolen, that she felt guilty about every single day. What if she used it? Not for herself, she barely touched it anyway, living off her bookstore wages and careful budgeting. But for others. For women like her. The idea was terrifying. And impossible. And exactly right. She picked up her journal and started a new page. At the top she wrote, "New beginnings." The church was called St. Michael's, a small brick building with cracked steps and a basement that smelled like old coffee and mildew. The pastor, Father Tomas, had kind eyes and didn't ask too many questions when Lily approached him about using the space. A support group for single mothers? He nodded slowly. Lord knows there's need for that. Tuesdays and Thursdays good. Perfect. Thank you, Father. Don't thank me. Just help people. Lily made flyers on the library computer, printed them at the copy shop, posted them at the clinic, the laundromat, the food bank. Simple text, no fancy design. Single mothers support group. No judgment. Free childcare. Tuesdays 7 p.m. She didn't know if anyone would come. 5 women showed up that first night. They sat in a circle of mismatched chairs, babies in carriers, toddlers playing with donated toys in the corner. Everyone looked tired. Guarded. Like they'd learned the hard way that help usually came with strings attached. "I'm Lily," she started, Grace asleep in her arms, Faith in the carrier at her feet. "Thank you for coming. I know it's hard to trust strangers, so I'll go first." She told them an edited version. Married young, husband had an affair, his family threw her out while pregnant. Spent time homeless. Had to start completely over. She didn't mention the Underwood name. Didn't mention the money. Just the parts that mattered. The rejection, the fear, the shame of not being enough. When she finished, the silence stretched. Then a woman with a black eye and a sleeping infant spoke. "My boyfriend put me in the hospital twice. Second time, they called CPS. Said if I went back to him, they'd take my baby." Her voice cracked. "But I got nowhere else to go. The shelter's full. My mama won't take me in because she likes him better than me. Another woman, older, with 3 kids playing at her feet. My husband drank away the rent money. Landlord evicted us. Been living in my car for 2 months. I shower at the gym, pretend we're fine, but my kids are hungry and I'm so tired I can't think straight. One by one they opened up. Abuse, addiction, homelessness, medical debt, mental illness, the welfare system that punished them for working, the shelters with month-long wait lists, the family members who'd stopped answering their calls. Different stories, same ending. Nowhere to go, no one to help, trying to survive on willpower and prayers. By the end of that first meeting, Lily's heart felt cracked open. These women were her. All of them. Just in different circumstances, wearing different faces. We'll meet again Thursday, she said. Same time. And if you need anything before then, diapers, formula, whatever, here's my number. She gave them the burner phone number. Didn't expect anyone to call. 3 women called that week. By the second month, 15 women were showing up regularly. By the third month, 30. They spilled out of the church basement into the hallway, babies crying, toddlers running, voices overlapping as they shared resources and phone numbers, and the kind of advice that only comes from living through hell. Father Tomas watched from the doorway one night, shaking his head in wonder. You've started something here, Lily. They started it, she said. I just gave them a place to meet. But it wasn't enough. Meeting twice a week, sharing stories, swapping baby clothes, it helped. But these women needed more. They needed actual housing, actual stability, a real chance to rebuild. That night, Lily lay awake long after Grace and Faith were asleep, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the money hidden under her floorboards. $10 million. Just sitting there, doing nothing. She could give it back. Try to return it anonymously somehow. Ease her conscience. Or she could use it. Really use it. Not for herself, but for them. For all the women sitting in that church basement. For all the ones who couldn't make it. For all the future women who'd find themselves thrown away. By morning, her decision was made. The apartment building sat on the corner of 5th and Morrison. A squat brick structure with boarded windows and a condemned sign on the door. Slated for demolition, the real estate agent said. But the owner might lease it cheap to someone willing to take it as is. Lily stood across the street, Grace and Faith in the double stroller, studying the building. It was ugly. Run down. Perfect. How much? She asked. The agent, a tired-looking man in a cheap suit, named a price that was almost insulting. It needs everything. Plumbing, electrical, probably asbestos. You'd be better off. I'll take it. He blinked. You'll take it? Cash. 3-year lease, option to buy. I can have a deposit by tomorrow. His eyebrows climbed. Cash. Is that a problem? No. No, ma'am. No problem at all. The renovations took 4 months. Lily hired contractors who didn't ask questions about where a single mother with twins got that kind of money. She paid in cash, kept receipts for everything, tried to make it look legitimate. The building transformed slowly. New windows. Rewired electrical. Plumbing that actually worked. Fresh paint in soft colors, yellows and blues and greens, nothing harsh. 12 units, each with a small kitchen and bathroom. A communal space on the first floor with a full kitchen, a play area, a small library of donated books. She called it New Beginnings. The name felt right. Simple. Hopeful without being naive. The women from the church group helped with the final touches. Painted murals in the children's area. Organized the kitchen. Brought furniture from thrift stores and yard sales. Nothing matched, but it was clean and sturdy and enough. On opening day, Lily stood in the communal kitchen and addressed the first group of residents. 8 women, 17 children between them. This is your home, she said, her voice steady despite the emotion tightening her throat. No one can throw you out for being poor or scared or imperfect. The only rules are no violence, no stealing from each other, and everyone contributes what they can. Some of you can work, some can't. That's okay. Some can watch kids while others go to interviews. Some can cook, some can clean. We figure it out together. A woman named Shanice, 19 with a newborn, raised her hand tentatively. How long can we stay? As long as you need. This isn't a shelter with a 30-day limit. It's transitional housing. You stay until you're stable enough to move on. And if we can't pay? Lily smiled. This place isn't about money. It's about helping each other survive. New Beginnings thrived in ways Lily hadn't dared imagine. The women formed a tight community, watching each other's children, sharing meals, helping each other find jobs and fill out paperwork. Some residents were there for months, others for over a year. A few even stayed on as employees, helping run the childcare program, teaching job skills workshops, maintaining the building. Lily became the director, though she insisted she was just Lily, no titles needed. She lived in one of the units with Grace and Faith, her door always open. She still worked mornings at Chapter and Brew. Samuels had been understanding when she'd explained she needed flexible hours for a new project. At night, she'd write in her journal. Document the stories, the struggles, the small victories. A woman getting her GED. A child's first day at school without tears. A resident landing a job, saving enough for a deposit on her own apartment. This was what the money was meant for. Not luxury or revenge, but survival. Dignity. Second chances. But late at night, alone in her room, Lily would check the news on her phone. Underwood investment scandal. FBI expands investigation. Vanessa Cole still missing, believed to have fled country. Clive Underwood maintains innocence, claims embezzlement was partner's doing. The past was still there, circling. Waiting. Sooner or later, it would catch up. But tonight, in this building full of women and children rebuilding their lives, Lily let herself breathe. Let herself feel proud of what they'd created. Grace stirred in her crib, making those small sounds that meant she'd wake soon. Lily went to her, picked her up, held her close. "We did something good, baby girl," she whispered. "Whatever happens next, we did something good." Outside, the city hummed. Somewhere, federal agents were searching for missing money. Somewhere, Clive was trying to save himself. Somewhere, Vanessa was running. But here, in this small corner of the world, 30 women and their children were safe. For now, that was enough. 2 years changed everything. Grace and Faith were toddlers now, walking, talking, turning Lily's world into chaos and joy in equal measure. Grace was fearless, climbing everything, while Faith was cautious, watching the world with those serious eyes that reminded Lily of herself. New Beginnings housed 25 women and 43 children. They'd expanded into the building next door, creating more units, a proper childcare center, a computer lab for job searching. Lily had hired staff, women who'd graduated from the program and wanted to give back. The waiting list was 3 months long. Lily Brooks had become real. She had a life, a purpose, a community. Lisa Pierce felt like someone she'd read about once, a character in a story that had ended badly. She still worked mornings at Chapter and Brew. Samuels had become something like a grandfather to the twins, keeping cookies behind the counter, reading them stories during slow hours. The routine grounded her, kept her connected to the person she'd been when she had nothing. It was a Tuesday morning, quiet, rain tapping against the windows. Lily was restocking the poetry section when the bell above the door chimed. She glanced up automatically, customer service smile ready. "Welcome to Chapter and..." The words died in her throat. The woman standing in the doorway was elegant despite the rain. Designer coat, expensive handbag, hair styled perfectly. But something was wrong. Her face was gaunt, her eyes hollow, her hands trembling as she lowered her umbrella. Margaret Underwood. Lily's heart stopped, then kicked into overdrive, adrenaline flooding her system. She turned back to the shelf quickly, keeping her face hidden, her breathing shallow. "She won't recognize you. You're different now. Short hair, glasses, 20 pounds heavier, different clothes, different name." "Excuse me," Margaret's voice cut through the silence. "Is there someone who can help me? I'm looking for..." She stopped. Lily could feel her stare, heavy and probing. "I'm sorry, do I?" Margaret's voice changed, sharpened. "Have we met?" Lily forced herself to turn slowly, keeping her expression neutral. "I don't think so. Can I help you find a book?" Margaret stepped closer, studying her face. Lily watched the recognition dawn, confusion first, then shock, then something that looked almost like fear. "Lisa?" It came out as a whisper. Lily's jaw tightened. After 2 years of being someone else, hearing that name felt like a slap. "I'm sorry, you have me confused with someone else. My name is Lily." "No." Margaret shook her head, moving closer. "No, it's you. You look different, but Lisa Pierce." You're Lisa Pierce. Silence stretched between them. In the back room, Lily could hear Samuel's humming, oblivious. The rain kept falling. The world kept turning. Finally, Lily set down the book she'd been holding. Why are you here, Margaret? Margaret's composure cracked. Her eyes filled with tears. Real tears, not the calculated kind she'd used to manipulate people. I didn't know you were. I was just looking for a place to sit. To think. I didn't know. What do you want? It's Clive. Margaret's voice broke on his name. He's been arrested. The FBI. They think he helped Vanessa steal the money. Lily's face remained carefully neutral, but her heart hammered. I'm sorry to hear that. Please. Margaret took another step forward. If you know anything, if you've heard from Vanessa, if she contacted you, why would she contact me? I don't know. I'm grasping at straws. The money is gone, Vanessa is gone, and they're saying Clive will go to prison for decades. He didn't do it, Lisa. He's not perfect, but he didn't steal that money. Lily wanted to laugh, to scream, to ask if Margaret remembered throwing her out, if she remembered watching her sit on that curb, if she remembered any of it. Instead, she said quietly, I'm sorry you're going through this, but I can't help you. Margaret stared at her, really looked at her, took in the short hair, the simple clothes, the calluses on her hands from honest work. The way Lily stood straighter now, met her eyes instead of looking away. You're different, Margaret said slowly. I had to be. Lily's voice was steady. You made sure of that. Margaret flinched like she'd been struck. Lisa, I know I was cruel to you. I know I said terrible things. But please, this is my son. My only child. If there's anything you know. There isn't. Lily picked up the book again, signaling the conversation was over. I haven't spoken to Clive in 2 years. I don't know where Vanessa is. I don't know anything about the money. Every word was technically true. She didn't know where Vanessa was. She didn't know anything about the money beyond what she'd read in the news. That it had been embezzled, that it was missing, that people were looking for it. Margaret's shoulders sagged. She looked older suddenly, smaller. All that power and pride stripped away, leaving just a frightened mother. I'm sorry, she whispered. For everything I did to you. For how I treated you. You deserved better. Lily met her eyes. Yes, I did. Margaret nodded slowly, accepting the blow. She turned toward the door, then stopped. You have children? I saw the photos on the counter. Twin daughters. They're beautiful. Margaret's voice was soft. You look happy. I am. I'm glad. And Margaret sounded like she meant it. I'm truly glad. Then she was gone, the bell chiming as the door closed behind her. Lily stood frozen, her hands shaking. Samuels emerged from the back room, took one look at her face, and said, You okay? I need 5 minutes. She went to the bathroom, locked the door, and leaned against the sink. Her reflection stared back, strong, older, different. Not the woman Margaret had destroyed. Someone new. But her hands still shook. 3 days later, Lily was at New Beginnings, helping in the childcare room, when one of the residents found her. Lily, there's a man outside. Says he needs to talk to you. He looks. She hesitated. Rough. Lily's stomach dropped. She knew somehow before she even looked. She left Grace and Faith with the childcare staff and went to the front entrance. Clive Underwood stood on the sidewalk, and he looked nothing like the man she'd married. His expensive suit was gone, replaced by wrinkled khakis and a jacket that had seen better days. His face was unshaven, his eyes sunken, his hands jammed in his pockets like he didn't know what else to do with them. He looked up when she stepped outside. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Lisa. His voice was hoarse. I wasn't sure it was really you. My mother said, but I had to see for myself. Lily crossed her arms. What do you want, Clive? I need help. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she remembered. I'm in trouble. Real trouble. The FBI thinks I helped Vanessa steal $10 million from the company. But I didn't. I swear I didn't. Then you have nothing to worry about. That's not how it works. I was CEO. It was my responsibility. Unless I can prove where the money went, I'm going to prison for 20 years. Lily kept her face blank. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? He stepped closer. Are you really? Because after what I did, what you did was throw me out while I was pregnant. You chose your mother and your mistress over your wife. So no, Clive, I'm not particularly sorry. He flinched. I deserve that. I deserve all of it. But Lisa, please. If you've heard anything, seen anything. Why would I have heard anything? The timing. His eyes were desperate now. You disappeared the same night the money did. Vanessa disappeared around the same time. I thought maybe she contacted you? Maybe you saw something. Lily's heart pounded, but her face stayed calm. I was homeless and pregnant, Clive. I wasn't exactly tracking corporate embezzlement. But if you did find something, I didn't. If someone had left something near you, maybe without you realizing. Clive. Her voice hardened. I don't have your money. He stared at her, searching her face for lies. She held his gaze, steady and unflinching. Finally, he looked away. I'm going to lose everything. Welcome to the club. The bitterness in her voice made him wince. I'm sorry. For all of it. You were good to me and I threw it away. Yes. You did. He looked at the building behind her, at the sign over the door. New beginnings. This is yours. This is ours. The women who live here. You did this? Built this? I survived. Then I helped others survive. That's what you do when people throw you away. You prove you were never trashed to begin with. Something broke in his face. Lisa. It's Lily now. Lisa Pierce died in an alley 2 years ago. And I need you to leave. Please. Leave, Clive. And don't come back. She turned and walked inside, leaving him standing on the sidewalk in the rain. Through the window, she watched him stand there for a long moment. Then he walked away, shoulders hunched, a broken man. Lily leaned against the door, her whole body shaking. The past had found her. And it wasn't done with her yet. Clive came back the next day. Lily was in her office, a small room on the first floor of New Beginnings, barely big enough for a desk and 2 chairs, when he pushed through the front door. One of the residents tried to stop him, but he brushed past her, found Lily's office, and walked in without knocking. We need to talk, he said, closing the door behind him. Lily looked up from the grant application she'd been writing. Her heart kicked into a faster rhythm, but she kept her face calm. I told you not to come back. I know it's you. He sat down uninvited, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. I know you've been hiding. Lisa Pierce, pregnant and homeless, disappears the same night $10 million goes missing from my company. Then 2 years later, there's a woman named Lily Brooks running a residential facility that costs serious money to operate. You think I'm stupid. I think you're desperate. I am desperate. His voice cracked. I'm facing 20 years in federal prison, Lisa. 20 years. For something I didn't do. You were the CEO. You had oversight responsibility. That's on you. Vanessa forged documents. She set up shell accounts. She made it look like legitimate investments while she was draining client trust funds. By the time I realized what was happening, the money was gone and so was she. Lily set down her pen. If that's true, prove it in court. I can't prove it without the money. He ran his hands through his hair. That old gesture, now frantic instead of charming. The FBI says if I can make the clients whole, they'll consider reducing charges. But the money is gone. Unless, he locked eyes with her. Unless you found it. The air in the room felt thin. Lily forced herself to breathe normally. Why would you think I found it? The timing. His voice dropped lower. Vanessa panicked. She called me that night, the night you came to my office. Said she needed to move the money, that someone was asking questions. She was supposed to meet me at a warehouse on 5th Street, but she never showed. The next morning, the money was gone. She was gone. And you, he pointed at her. You disappeared too. I was homeless, Clive. I didn't disappear. You threw me out. That warehouse is 3 blocks from where I lived. 3 blocks from where you would have been walking that night. That's too much coincidence. Lily's hands clenched under the desk, but her face stayed neutral. Are you seriously accusing me of stealing $10 million? Did you find it? He leaned forward, desperate. That bag? It went missing the same night you did. Please, Lisa. If you found it. I didn't find anything. You're lying. I'm surviving. There's a difference. He stood abruptly, started pacing the small office. This place. This whole operation. Where did the money come from? Grants. Donations. Fundraising. Show me the paperwork. Get out of my office. Show me. His voice rose, and Lily heard footsteps in the hall, residents responding to the raised voice. She stood, moving to the door. You need to leave. Now. Help me, Lisa. He grabbed her arm, not hard, but enough to stop her. His eyes were wild, pleading. Help me and we can start over. I'll leave my mother. I'll do it right this time. We can be a family, you, me, and the twins. I'll be a good father, I swear. Just help me get through this. Lily looked down at his hand on her arm, then back at his face. And she saw it clearly now, not remorse, not love. Just calculation. Manipulation. The same script he'd probably used on Vanessa. She pulled her arm free. You mean you need my money to save yourself? His face flickered. That's not. Yes, it is. Her voice was cold now. You don't want me. You don't want your daughters. Daughters you've never even asked about, by the way. You want salvation. And you think I'm stupid enough to give it to you. I made mistakes. You destroyed me. The words came out low and fierce. You humiliated me, abandoned me, let your mother throw me out like garbage while I was pregnant. And now you want me to save you. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. But Lisa, please. Stop calling me that. If you have that money and don't give it back, you're an accomplice. His voice changed, hardened. You're guilty of receiving stolen property. Possibly conspiracy. The FBI will want to know where you got the funding for this place. They'll investigate. They'll find out. Lily stepped back, suddenly seeing him clearly. Are you threatening me? I'm telling you the truth. His mask was dropping now, desperation giving way to anger. If I go down for this, I'll make sure everyone knows about you. About the timing. About this place and where the money came from. I'll make sure they investigate every dollar you've ever touched. You'll ruin innocent women and children to save yourself? I'll do whatever I have to do. There it was. The real Clive Underwood. Not the charming husband. Not the repentant ex. Just a man willing to destroy anyone who couldn't save him. Lily walked to the door, opened it. 3 residents stood in the hallway watching. Protecting her. I don't have your money, Clive. Her voice was steady, final. And even if I did, you'd never see it. You chose Vanessa. You chose your mother. You chose yourself every single time. Now live with it. You'll regret this. He moved toward the door, his face twisted with rage. When they come for you, when they start asking questions, you'll regret not helping me. The only thing I regret is ever believing you loved me. He stopped at the doorway, looked at her one last time. Whatever he saw in her face made him flinch. Then he pushed past the women in the hall and left, the front door slamming behind him. Lily's legs went weak. She sank into her chair, her hands shaking. One of the residents, Shanice, who'd been there since the beginning, poked her head in. You okay, Lily? You want us to call the police? No. No police. I'm fine. But she wasn't fine. Clive knew. Maybe he couldn't prove it, but he knew. And he was desperate enough to burn everything down trying. That night, after Grace and Faith were asleep, Lily sat in the dark with her phone, doom scrolling through news sites. At 11:47 p.m., the headline appeared. Breaking. Vanessa Cole arrested in Singapore. Lily's heart stopped. She clicked the article with trembling fingers. Vanessa Cole, wanted in connection with the Underwood Investment Group embezzlement scandal, was apprehended by Singapore authorities attempting to board a private plane to Jakarta. Cole has been detained pending extradition to the United States. In a statement to local police, Cole allegedly claimed that former CEO Clive Underwood masterminded the embezzlement scheme, using her as a front to access client accounts. He planned everything, Cole reportedly said. I was just following his instructions. Federal prosecutors have declined to comment, but sources say Cole's testimony could significantly impact the case against Underwood, who has maintained his innocence. Lily read it 3 times. Then she set down her phone and laughed, sharp and breathless, edged with hysteria. Vanessa had turned on him. The woman he'd chosen, the woman he'd destroyed his marriage for, had just thrown him under the bus to save herself. Karma wasn't just catching up. It was running him over. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You did this. I know you did. This isn't over. Clive. Lily deleted the message and blocked the number. Then she checked on her daughters, sleeping peacefully, Grace's arm thrown over Faith's stomach, both of them breathing in sync. "We're safe," she whispered. "Whatever happens, we're safe." But in the back of her mind, a voice whispered, "For how long?" Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. The city hummed. And somewhere, Clive Underwood's world was finally collapsing. Just like hers had 2 years ago. The difference was Lily had survived her collapse. Had built something from the ashes. Clive was just burning. And she felt nothing watching him fall. Not satisfaction, not revenge, not even pity. Just the quiet certainty that some people destroy themselves, and all you can do is make sure you're not standing too close when they do. The trial lasted 6 weeks. Lily didn't attend, but she followed every headline, every update. The evidence mounted quickly once Vanessa started talking. Emails between her and Clive planning the theft. Bank records showing Clive had set up the shell accounts. Testimony from former employees who'd seen them working late together, always behind closed doors. The defense tried to paint Vanessa as the mastermind, Clive as the victim. But the paper trail told a different story. He'd orchestrated everything, then planned to disappear with Vanessa and the money, leaving his investors ruined and his mother to face the consequences. The jury deliberated for 3 days. Guilty on all counts. Clive Underwood was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison for conspiracy, fraud, and embezzlement. Vanessa got 12, having cooperated with prosecutors. Margaret Underwood was forced to liquidate assets, the estate, the cars, the art collection, everything, to pay partial restitution to the victims. It still wasn't enough. Clive had stolen from retired teachers, small business owners, families who'd trusted him with their life savings. Some would never recover. Lily read about it in the newspaper, sitting in her office at New Beginnings. Grace and Faith played at her feet, building towers with blocks and knocking them down with delighted shrieks. She felt nothing looking at Clive's mugshot. Not vindication, not satisfaction. Just a distant sadness for the person she used to be. The one who'd loved him, who'd believed his promises, who'd thought being his wife made her valuable. That woman was gone. Had been for a long time. She folded the newspaper and threw it away. The past could stay buried. 6 months later, on a gray November afternoon, Margaret Underwood appeared at New Beginnings. Lily almost didn't recognize her. No designer coat this time, no pearls, no perfectly styled hair. Margaret wore a simple wool coat from a department store, her hair threaded with more gray than before, her face lined with exhaustion and something that looked like humility. She stood in the doorway of the communal kitchen where Lily was helping prepare dinner and waited to be noticed. One of the residents saw her first. "Lily, someone's here for you." Lily looked up from the vegetables she was chopping and froze. For a moment, neither woman spoke. "May I talk to you?" Margaret's voice was quiet, stripped of its old authority. "Privately." Lily wiped her hands on a towel, her mind racing. She should say no. Should tell Margaret to leave. But something in the older woman's face stopped her. "My office," she said finally. They walked through the building in silence. Women and children moved around them, cooking, laughing, living. Margaret looked at everything, her expression unreadable. In the office, Lily sat behind her desk, creating distance. Margaret remained standing, clutching her purse like a shield. "I won't take much of your time," Margaret began. I needed to say something. Before I leave town." "You're leaving?" "There's nothing left for me here. The house is sold, Clive is in prison, and everyone I thought was a friend has disappeared." She smiled bitterly. "Turns out loyalty is expensive, and I can't afford it anymore." Lily said nothing. Waited. Margaret took a breath. "I destroyed my son. With my pride, my prejudice, my inability to see value in anything that didn't come from the right family or the right background. You were good for him, Lisa. You were kind, honest, hardworking. Everything he needed. But I couldn't see past where you came from. I taught him that people like you were less than. And in doing so, I taught him he was entitled to whatever he wanted, consequences be damned." Her voice broke. "He's in prison because of me. Because I raised him to believe he was above the rules, above decency. And you," she looked at Lily with tears in her eyes. "You were collateral damage. I'm so sorry. For everything I said, everything I did. You deserved so much better." The words hung in the air between them. Lily studied Margaret's face, looking for manipulation, for angles. But all she saw was genuine remorse. And exhaustion. The kind that comes from losing everything and finally understanding why. I forgive you, Lily said quietly. Margaret blinked. You what? I forgive you, Margaret. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. I can't carry that anger anymore. It's too heavy, and I have better things to carry now. Margaret's tears spilled over. She sank into the chair, covering her face with her hands. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Margaret looked up, her eyes red but steady. Will you ever tell anyone about the money? She asked quietly. Lily held her gaze, unflinching. What money? Margaret's face flickered with something. Understanding, maybe, or respect. She nodded slowly. You built something good here. Something real. Those women, those children, they're lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have them. Margaret stood, smoothed her coat. I won't bother you again. I just needed you to know, you were never the mistake. I was. She walked to the door, paused. For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. Of who you became despite everything we did to break you. Goodbye, Margaret. Goodbye, Lisa. Then she was gone. Lily sat alone in her office for a long time, watching dust motes drift through the afternoon light. She felt lighter somehow. Not healed, some wounds never fully heal, but released. The chains she'd been carrying had finally fallen away. That evening, Lily found Grace and Faith in the garden behind New Beginnings. It wasn't much, just a small plot where residents grew tomatoes and herbs and flowers. But in the golden light of sunset, it looked like paradise. Grace was digging in the dirt with a plastic shovel, her face serious with concentration. Faith was gentler, carefully planting seeds in neat rows like Rosa had taught her. Around them, the community thrived. Women sat on the back steps, talking and laughing. Children ran through the grass, playing tag. Someone had started a pot of soup on the outdoor stove, and the smell drifted through the warm air. This was what she'd built. Not with Clive's stolen money, though that's where it started, but with intention, with purpose, with the collective strength of women who refused to stay broken. Lily sat down in the grass, and her daughters immediately climbed into her lap, dirty hands and all. Mama, look! Grace held up a worm, delighted. That's wonderful, baby. Faith leaned against her shoulder. Can we stay here forever? As long as we need to, sweet girl. She wrapped her arms around them both, feeling their warmth, their aliveness, their absolute certainty that they were loved and safe and enough. Margaret had been wrong about so many things. But she was right about one. Worth isn't given. It's inherent. Lily had always been valuable. She just needed to be thrown away to discover it. She'd been Lisa Pierce, the foster kid who thought she had to earn her place in the world. Then Mrs. Clive Underwood, shrinking herself to fit someone else's idea of acceptable. Then a homeless woman in an alley, choosing survival over principle. Now she was Lily Brooks. Mother, director, friend, builder of safe spaces for women society had discarded. They'd measured her worth by her bank account, her pedigree, her ability to make herself small. But worth wasn't in any of those things. It was in Grace's laugh, in Faith's careful kindness, in the 30 women and 43 children sleeping safely under this roof tonight. In the meals shared, the tears dried, the futures rebuilt one day at a time. Margaret thought she'd been discarding trash that night she threw Lily out. Instead, she'd freed a warrior. Mama, Grace tugged her sleeve. Why are you crying? Lily wiped her eyes, smiled. Because I'm happy, baby. So happy. As the sun set behind New Beginnings, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Lily held her daughters close and whispered one final truth. We're not broken. We never were. We're just beginning. And somewhere in the distance, the city hummed its approval.